All right, we are going to talk about the second part of this week's assignment, which is looking at trophic pyramids. So, this one you might not be as familiar with, but we're just taking the same information and we're going to use it and talk about how the energy is moved from one organism to the other. So, this trophic pyramid is going to talk about the distribution of energy among trophic levels, and we have different levels. And you kind of saw that with the food chain in the last one that I just did. But you can see there are producers, and the producers are at the bottom of the pyramid, and then it goes to your primary consumers, which would be your herbivores right here. And then it goes to your secondary consumers, which, is your third level. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes and not following here. And then your tertiary consumer would be your fourth level. So you can see the producer are the first one, so that's the primary producer. Then you go to the primary consumer, and then you go to the secondary consumer and the tertiary consumer. And if we had another level, usually it's not much higher than that, is the quaternary consumer. This one just goes as high as the tertiary. So this one also, we could label this guy would be our apex predator. So the hawk there is the apex predator. So you have different layers. Okay, so as a clarification, this is a review from the last time. We talked about primary consumers are herbivores. So we got the African savanna on this one. So we have the long grass of the African savanna is the producer. And the producer is then going to go into the herbivore, which is a primary consumer. So primary consumer. So this is the primary producer, goes into the primary consumer, and then it goes into the secondary consumer, which is the carnivore. So the carnivore eats the herbivore. And it can go up to the tertiary consumer, it can go up to the quaternary consumer. And then again, we have omnivores. In the last one, I talked about the bear. This time we're talking about the baboon. We could also say humans are omnivores. But baboons eat fruits and grasses, but they also have a taste for meat. So they would eat birds, rodents, and even the young of larger mammals like is antelope and sheep. So we have the different layers then, again, as a review. All right, how much energy is transferred between each layer? Only 10%. So you start with 100% in the producers here, and then as you move up the layers, you only pass on 10% of the energy. And why is that? Because 90% of that energy is that organism is used and is lost as heat, and they're doing their bodily functions, eating, sleeping, doing everything they need. And so only 10% of that energy moves on to the next level. So you can see it gets much smaller. Here's an example. So here we have 6,000 kilocalories. And remember, you talk about kilocalories, how we measure energy. So you look at calories on a food. You learned about that in health. So calories that are there. So the primary producers, trees, shrubs, roots, deciduous trees. Remember, trees, that means just they lose their leaves. But they have 6,000 calories. Then these organisms here, the herbivores, are going to eat the producers, and only 10% goes up. So only 10% of that energy. So these guys are only getting 600 calories. And I should say per square meter. So remember, think of a meter stick, and so a square, it's a pretty small area that they can get 600 calories. So they're grazers, and they can graze. They don't have to move too far. Then the next one is, so now we're taking off zeros. This one, now 10% moved on. So remember, 10% moves on each time. So now we only have 60, took another zero off. So now these guys are now our secondary consumers. These are our carnivores. And these carnivores now are getting only 60 calories in a square meter. So think about a square meter, 1 meter stick. That's what they get. So they have to kind of go further out to find enough food. And then you go to the bear, and in 1 square meter, he only gets six calories. So what usually happens, he's our apex predator again. 1 square, that's not going to do much. 6 calories, he's going to be like, that's not filling me up. So what happens is their territory has to get really big. So, for example, mountain lions. Mountain lions can have territories that are 3 or 4 states big. They can put some radio collars on them, and they can track where they've been. But they have to have a bigger territory because they have so few calories per square meter. So that's the only way they can survive. Also, we can talk about numbers of organisms. So if you only 10% of the energy moves up, so again, we're looking at taking up all this energy as they move through the levels on that. The other thing that changes is how many organisms that are there. So the pyramid is also showing there are lots of producers, but very few apex predators because there's just not enough energy for them to be able to survive. So very few. So if a mountain lion only has 5 kilocalories of energy, it's going to need a lot more space. So there are much fewer mountain lions compared to rabbits, and they have to have a bigger space to find enough food to survive. So there's going to be, they get the most energy at the bottom, and they're going to be the most of the organisms that are found there too. All right. So that one is, again, you're going to do a short assignment where you're going to try to make your own trophic pyramid that's like this, that we see here. You're going to drag organisms over from a food web, and then you're going to answer some questions, and then you're done for the week. So good job, biology students. I'm, again, trying to grade things as you get it done. Check in on Teams if you have questions, or message me on Schoology.